I think my children are living proof of the Southern Baptist Convention's book that's titled, It's Okay to be an MK. And I would add in there a PK as well. Thank you, children, all 7 of you, for making the necessary adjustments so I could be in ministry. I believe the unique pressures you have experienced made you a better person, and I love each one of you. It's no secret that I'm married way above my pay grade. In October of 1975, Melinda married an unemployed factory rat. All she ever wanted to be was married with kids, living in a bungalow with a white picket fence near family, because family is a primary virtue. And all I ever gave her was something different. 18 months after our marriage, her father and our preacher, Bill Butterfield, encouraged me to preach. She didn't marry a preacher, but she accepted the idea that she would become one. So we packed everything we owned into a 6-foot U-Haul trailer and moved to Knoxville. Spicy pickled vegetables and tears were our first dinner because we didn't pack appropriately for a meal, and there was no GPS to say the nearest restaurant. 2 years later, I entered full-time ministry. It's a good life that I would encourage young men to pursue. Melinda didn't marry a missionary, but in 1988, she accepted the role and we moved to Hong Kong. Now here's where it gets good. I promised her a German-built sewing machine, a romantic meal for 2 at the Peak in Hong Kong, and a child. We moved halfway around the world on that promise to a new and a very different culture where the experience was ultimately very positive. She, however, made serious sacrifices so that we could minister in Asia. She got her sewing machine. Do I get an amen for that? Amen. She got 2 children, not 1. Our favorite souvenirs from Hong Kong. I still owe her an evening at the Peak. However, in my defense, on the eve of the last day in Hong Kong, we had high tea at the Peninsula, the number 3 ranked hotel in the world at the time. And I had to dress up with a necktie to drink tea. This is the last time I'm wearing a necktie, by the way. I'm off script. When we first married, Melinda set the parameters. 2 weeks into our marriage, she said to me, "If you ever try to make me choose between God and you, you will lose. I will choose God." And then she walked away. Let that sink in for me. In every crisis, it was her faith that got us through. She polished my rough edges. For example, no more am I allowed to say that's up to snuff. You know, snuff causes lip cancer, I guess. And I'm not allowed to say I don't have a dog in that fight. She pushed those edges away from me. She's always been my greatest support, and she helped me keep balance in my life, especially in Hong Kong. But whenever I let ministry consume too many hours in a week, she would say, "There's some little ones here who'd like to meet their dad." A gentle way to help me to be balanced and keep family as priority. So Melinda, I appreciate all that you have done for me. And my love for you is higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans, and wider than the sea. On our wedding day on October 11th, 1975, during the processional, Melinda stopped and gave a rose to her mother and gave her mother a kiss. During the recessional, she gave a rose to my mother and kissed my mother, and I want to honor that. And while it's not a rose, there's a rose in it. I love you. Our plans are simple. We signed up to teach a Bible class that goes through the month of August, and we're going to keep that promise. We'll be teaching Bible classes here on Sunday morning and Wednesday night, Melinda on Wednesday night. And then once this quarter is over, we plan to go away for a few months to visit other congregations in this area. But at the first of the year, we'll be back. I'll be like a bad penny. You can't get rid of me. So I got some old business I need to clear up. Is Rhea here? There you are, Rhea. About 15 or 18 years ago, apparently Gary thought I said too much about canoes. My canoe in particular, probably the reason I don't like Chevrolet pickup trucks is because I watched that man drive off with my aluminum 17-foot canoe that we had to sell so I could go to Hong Kong because nobody would store it. So after I came here, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, Gary decided I used the word canoe too many times in my illustration, and so he snatched a canoe, I'm told, from your Christmas tree, and I want to give you your canoe back. And the plan is I can talk about canoes again. Now your tree can be complete.
Thank you.
Gary, I'm going to talk about canoes. I want to invite Stephen, if he will come up to this platform with me, and each one of our elders that's in the room. Would you come up and join Stephen and I? So to the church, this is important. Stephen is our minister, not my minister, or our minister. And I urge you to give Erica and their children and Stephen the same love and acceptance that you gave us. I am confident Stephen will do a great job. And I'm looking forward to working with him. And I hope you are too. So I want you to join us. If you elders will put your arms on Stephen. And I want you to join us in prayer. God, thank you for bringing Stephen to us. We're grateful for the experience he has and the leadership he'll help provide this church. I pray, Father, you give him comfort and peace. I pray for his family, for Erica and their children, that you'll comfort and bless them. May we always be supportive and loving of this family. Thank you for every kindness you show us. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, Stephen, I don't have something as fancy as flowers to give you, but here's the passing of the baton. This used to be my office key, and now it's your office key. You're going to do good. To the congregation, I'm left with the priestly blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. God bless you.
Thank you, Chuck. Now it's my turn. And you're going to figure out real quickly that Chuck and I did not coordinate our presentations here. I want to be able to see them and their family, and you, and that. So we're here to celebrate lives dedicated to service. And I'm going to call this the first phase. As you finish the first phase of your service to the Lord, that's what we're celebrating today, okay? But before we get started with that, what I want to do is identify some of the guests that we have here. We see 3 rows of people here. I am for sure I don't have everybody listed here, okay? I apologize for that before starting here. But Bob and Emily Payne are here. Vernon and Cindy Birch are here. Greg Foster is here. Diana and Ron Heath are here. Sabrina Dave Brewer are here, part of the family. And Annette and Paul Williams. We thank you for coming. If I have missed somebody up here, it's not on purpose. It was just I didn't get your name and be able to do that. But I know Chuck and Melinda and the family appreciate it here. And their extended family here in the church appreciate you coming and demonstrating this love and concern for them. So let's get started with this discussion. Now, if you've ever been around Chuck when he preaches a funeral, please, this is not a funeral, okay? But when Chuck preaches a funeral, there's something that he always kind of starts with. And while not a funeral, it is appropriate. He's mentioned some of the timeline up there, but you see it right there. What we're here to talk about is the dash. Okay, when Chuck starts a funeral, he says, we're here to talk about this individual, and we're going to talk about the dash is inappropriate for their lives. And so is this. So we're going to talk about this dash this morning a little bit as we go through this. So let's get started at the beginning. Chuck mentioned this, but I thought, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? But look at that beautiful young couple. Look at that dark brown hair that Chuck has. And the length of that dark brown hair that Chuck has. For those days, and I know when that was because I was about that age too, that was pretty long for those days, but within acceptable Church of Christ rules at that point in time. Now, what I was told, the picture, they're so old that the picture's almost in black and white, right? And Chuck had on, for his wedding, a green velvet tux. So I've never seen a green velvet tux in my life. But what I was told is that when he turned that tux back in, they were kind of out of style by that time. So it was repurposed as an Elvis Presley velvet picture. So Chuck, your tux lived on in someone's basement as a picture of Elvis at that point in time. So now, what we have is the other end of that equation I had up there. This is what that couple looks like today. Melinda's still as beautiful as she ever was, okay? But Chuck got his hair cut. And guess what? It has changed colors. It is now all white. But that's not what the dash is about. The dash is about what happened inside them. We're looking at the pictures, the before and the now, okay? But what we're going to talk about is how that dash matured over time and what happened. So, but before I get into that, what I want to do is say, so you all know, everybody comes into these things, when's he going to be done? Okay, well, this is what we're going to do this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about the dash. That's what the first thing is. Then we're going to have comments from guests that are here and family members. Bob Payne from South Point is going to speak. Greg from Sand Springs is going to talk a little bit. Rochelle and Jeremiah are going to give we're going to get the inside story from them. We have a video that we'll talk about or show. There will be a presentation of a quilt for the family, and then we'll have prayers for their retirement, and then, lunch will be after that. This is the timeline of all the things Chuck has done. And he spoke about those over time, and he even spoke about some today. But you can see that they stayed consistent. And there's, I'm used to reviewing resumes for people to apply for jobs. And one of the things I always look for are gaps. There's no gap in this resume. There is no time that Chuck and Melinda weren't in service to God. But as Chuck mentioned, when he and Melinda met, he wasn't exactly what mom and dad wanted for her, okay? And she made it clear to him, that there were some things that needed to be changed here if they were going to continue. So this is kind of what Chuck looked like. Okay, when Melinda first saw him, he had some rough edges. Okay, there was not a lot of focus in where he was going, where his true north was, and so Melinda had some pretty serious discussions with him. Now, not all at once, but Chuck changed. Okay, he went from that cobbled set of rocks that were rough and you didn't know where they were going to end up as a sidewalk, a wall, or we're going to be thrown into the river. Didn't know, but over time he changed. And he's changing as we speak now, Some of the rough edges were ground off. I think he would agree with that. He found what his true north was and then focused on that, and Melinda was right there with him. This didn't happen overnight. This picture of Chuck now is a result of the dash. This is what the dash created out of Chuck. And we should all think about that in our lives, is to, we're never stagnant. We should always be going from, and I'd hate for someone to put the rocks up there that I looked like when I started, okay? But that's what we all want to do. And Chuck, your sermon was right on target this morning for that message here. Now, let's look at what the dash looked like, okay? So, he said, we started out, he said, we're going to be ministers. Surprise. I'm going to be a minister. And he went to the preaching school. And while he was at preaching school, one of the things he did, he preached at little congregations all over. So the good news about that was, the bad news about that was, during this intense Bible study that he had to conduct all the time, day in and day out, and if you've ever talked to anybody that went to a preacher school, it is intense. It is very, very intense. He had to develop a sermon. The good news is, he preached that same sermon over and over and over. Every new church they went to, he had the sermon in his pocket. So, yeah, you want me to preach? Yeah, I'll give me $10 and I'll be there. And that's how it worked. And so he did all that. During that time, he went on 4 campaigns. Good job, bud. That's really getting out there, doing the real thing out there in the community, doing those campaigns. However, he went on one of those campaigns when Rochelle was 13 days old. That's not so good, okay? That's not a good thing, okay? And, I can't throw rocks at you too much for this, because I did the exact same thing with Rhea. Early in my career, I did something right after one of our kids was born that she's like, you see this little guy we got around here? Aren't you going to stay around for a while? The good news for you and me, our wives are very forgiving. Our wives are very forgiving, and they've forgiven us of that. However, the fact that everybody knows this story means they haven't forgotten. Okay, they haven't forgotten at all what we did there. The next place Chuck went was to Hanoverton. Melinda became a Pittsburgh fan there. I thought she was always a Pittsburgh fan, because if you listen to her now, it's Pittsburgh Professional Sports. Absolutely. Pittsburgh Professional Sports, as you did that. But I think what's really, really important, and what starts to define the dash, is they developed a tight group of friends there. When they went to that church, they not only invested in themselves in terms of getting to know God's people there and becoming tight friends, they helped them in doing that. Very important for all of us to understand that as we go through our lives. Also, Chuck spent time outside of worship and Bible class getting to know that congregation. He went out and visited all the members and current and former members, and encouraged them in their life away from the building. Extremely, extremely important. South Point. So when Chuck went there, initially there were no elders there. That's a tough situation for a young minister to go into. It's tough enough to go in and connect with the eldership, but if you got to connect with every member of the congregation in terms of leadership, it becomes very difficult to do. Chuck did a great job of that. He did a great job of that. He also went outside the church in the community and worked with the prisoners in the area and was able to start a little prison ministry while I was there, and showed his ability to reach out to people who society maybe hasn't put away, and not the people that show up every day to church, and try to give them an understanding of God's will and God's love for them. He mentioned Hong Kong, okay? So that wasn't just all of a sudden. Chuck had a longing for that, even from school, that he wanted to do ministry work. As a matter of fact, one of those campaigns he went on was in England. So he went overseas to do that campaign. And so he had a longing for that. And Melinda says, okay, go ahead, hon. Go ahead. Get this out of your system. Okay? I want that white picket fence and that little White House and northeastern Ohio. That's where we're going to end up. Okay? Well, 2 years later, off they go to Hong Kong with Andrea, who was 6, and Rochelle, who was 11. Now, they were at South Point, okay, and went to Hong Kong. Can you imagine the culture shock of that? New language. And by the way, why didn't you pick a country that had a language that was even close to ours, okay? This one is not even close, so very difficult to learn. A large city. How many know how big the city of South Point is? How big is it? 3,600? That's exact. Huh? Yeah, I looked it up. It's 3,500 according to the web, okay? 3,500 people in South Point. How many know how big Hong Kong is? 7.3 million. So huge culture shock there, huge faith in God to take care of them during this process. And during that time, that God blessed them with that ability to deal with people of different cultures, different languages, and work with them in all different ways. And as he said, the blessings in Hong Kong. Of the many, many blessings there were 2 that they brought back with them. And, I think that's a really good picture of Jeremiah. He is wanting something, and he's letting people know about it. And May's like, I got this. Okay, hey, bud, come here. I got this, and I'm satisfied with my thumb. Okay, so she was the calming influence on him back in those days. Went with 2, came back with 4. Good job. Okay, I just hit the wrong part of this button, and the next picture isn't coming up. Jamie, what do I do? Help. They're taking care of me from the back. Great, thank you. So, the Laurel Church, and what I want to say, you see, it's only 6 months. They were there 6 months. But what the Laurel Church did for them is they treated them like their beloved members all the time. When they were in Hong Kong, they treated them with great respect, concern, and love. And when they came back, they said, you need time to kind of adjust, which was correct. And so they said, just hang out here for a while and get inculcated back into the U.S. culture, and then we'll figure out what to do once you kind of get your feet on the ground here. Well, Chuck, he did all that, and then he got bored after about 6 months, and he went and found himself a job. And that was not in Ohio or anywhere. That was in Oklahoma. Go to my next chart, please. So, Chuck went to Sand Springs, Oklahoma. And there what he did was he many things, but one of the things he did is he involved himself with the school system, not as a teacher. You went all the way to the 3rd bullet, didn't you, Melinda? Stop reading ahead. He involved himself with the school system to help provide spiritual leadership with the school. Also, he helped the church look to the future. Sometimes in a church, you can get so busy with everything that's going on in the here and now, you don't think about the future and how to grow the church to where it needs to be. Chuck was involved in that, and he's helped us with that. Okay, so in the transition from Oklahoma to Ohio, they found out that OSU in Ohio means something totally different than OSU and Oklahoma means. I-O. Stephen, okay. There you go. Stephen, I apologize for that. I know every time I've met Stephen, he had a Marshall shirt on or a Lipscomb shirt on. I never seen him wear Ohio State gear, but we'll fix that. He's shaking his head, no, you won't, back there. Okay, so please, let's go to the next chart, please. So what I'd like to say here is that, all the people from all the other places, Xenia benefited from what you helped Chuck and Melinda do. The dash is we're starting to mold that dash. They showed up here with a deep understanding of God's Word from the study that Chuck has done. If you ever looked at his library or talked to him about it, books. And while he didn't read all those books, okay, I'm pretty sure of that, he did read the majority of them. Okay, and that's good. They came with a passion for God's family. Things that they could help the family with and things that they could get help from the family with. They became a part of that family. Able to minister to those people who aren't exactly the most easy to minister to. Very important for a minister. And obviously, when they showed up here at Xenia, they had a deep trust in God and turned their lives over to God as they worshiped with us. Next chart, please. So, when I got to Xenia here, we got this long time. I could have put a whole list of things. Oh, I know. Yeah, I know what they're doing, laughing at now. I'm like, what did I misspell? No, I know what they're laughing at now. So when they came to Xenia, we could have a long list of things that they did here. But what I wanted to try to do is to take those things and turn them into accomplishments or tenets of value for the congregation here. They adopted Xenia as their own, except for May. May was a little miffed. I've gotten word, May, from Mom and Dad. I understand. But she eventually became a Greene County person and has lifetime friends here in Greene County. But I thought I wanted to do that because not all these transitions were easy on those kids. And Chuck mentioned that in his discussion this morning. They raised their family here, okay? They weren't all adults when they showed up here. They were kids. And so they got to raise their families here. And I want to tell one story about Melinda in this process of raising the family here. So we were interviewing Chuck for the position. And we come to that part of the interview when we say, and Melinda was in there during all of this, and come to that, Melinda, do you have any questions of the congregation here or anything like that? And while she didn't quite physically do this, I felt that she was doing this. She stuck her finger right in my chest and said, tell me why I should raise my kids here. Whoa, what a great question. So we apparently answered that question okay. By the way, Erica and Stephen kind of had the same question. They didn't stick their finger in my chest and say it, but they certainly had that same question. And it's appropriate because we're a family here. The minister is a member here first and then a minister in this congregation. That's the way we want that to be. They conducted, Chuck led devotionals for many, many, many years. Took a group of people to devotionals in the nursing homes. And one of the things that's really interesting about that is sometimes Chuck led singing. And they still invited us back. Okay, so that showed the value of what he was teaching, okay? They encouraged us and helped us get small groups started here, a big deal. And here's a really important thing. In times of need, they were there face to face. It wasn't, and I like emails and text and all that kind of stuff, and even phone calls. Chuck and Melinda's faces were there with people when they needed them. Also, Chuck was an honored Boy Scout leader here in this, and he was able to influence young men. Some of them were in this congregation that he had in his scout troop, but many, many weren't, and he was able to provide a spiritual leadership and what a spiritual man looks like for those young men. And as such, he's been identified as a mentor for many young Boy Scouts. When they say, I'm leaving, who's your mentor? Mr. Chuck. So next chart, please. So in summary, they came here. They adopted Xenia as their home. They walked beside us during all of the ups and downs of that activity. And so we thank you for that. On a personal level, I would like to thank you for doing that to me and my family. Very, very important to us. So we thank you. Aside from the canoe issue, we thank you for what you did for us. Next chart, please. However, we expect you to continue for the next 23 years here at Xenia and work with us. And that's the second phase. That'll be the second phase of your service to God. Okay? Now I have, next chart please. We have some people that are going to speak. Bob, wherever you are, I think I see you, yep, right there. Please come on up and we have your words. Greg, Rochelle, and Jeremiah to follow. Please use this microphone over here in this pulpit, and that will be great for you, okay?
Okay. Well, I don't know. What's with Steve and Marshall? Are you a graduate of Marshall University?
My dad is.
It is. Well, I'm a graduate of Marshall, too. I was hoping you were because I already liked you more than I do Chuck. I'm not done with you yet. They wanted me to ask me if I could say a few things. This is 40 years this month that we've known you guys. It seemed like 50. They asked me to say some things about you, some good things I had to say. Now let's go to the next topic. Melinda, man, you talk about a crown in heaven. You've got it. Yeah, to raise these brats of yours and to take care of Chuck, you can do anything you want the rest of your life. You're going to be okay. Yeah, but what to say good about Chuck? If I can do this. One thing I can say about Chuck, in June of 2020, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And when you start your treatments and go through all that, you start thinking about life and the end of it as well. Of all the people to call, I called Chuck. And I asked him, I said, if God has different plans for me than what we'd like for it to be, I said, will you preach my funeral? He said, who is this? No, I've known, I'm an accountant by trade, very analytical and all that stuff. Yeah. I talk to Chuck about once a year, and that when he was in South Point and we started the prison ministry at Ashland, later on in life, I thought that's where I'd visit him next time. But I always remember the first time we went over there, when they closed that first door. I looked, there's about a 2-inch gap below the door, and I was thinking, how do I squeeze myself back underneath that? Because if you've never been in a federal prison, it's kind of a scary thing. And if you have, we don't want to know about it. You know, just keep that to yourself. But I love Chuck. You know, he's one of those kind that we may not speak a lot, we may not have a visit a lot, but he's the guy you turn to whenever whatever you need may come up in life. By the way, South Point is 2 words, not 1, just so you know, because you were talking about grammatical errors. I just wanted to point that out. But Chuck, Melinda, yeah, we love you like brothers and sisters. You know, you've always been there when we need you, except you went to Hong Kong and left us in a lurch because we didn't have a preacher. And, you know, a lot of us have never forgiven you for that, but we'll get over it. But we do appreciate, and if we had any small part in making you the guy and the man who you are, we're grateful for that. He mentioned Don Kelly, who was one of our elders that you helped appoint. He was the one that married Emily and I. He was his son Scott was good friends with Emily, brought Emily to church with him, and that's where I met her. So I always was, when Don, he recently passed away, but when he was alive, when I talked to him, I'd say, I blame you for all this, you know, for my kids and for, you know, Emily and everything that go by. But we miss Chuck. You know, we're looking for a preacher right now. We're trying to get him to come back. And if he doesn't want to, he really hasn't said no, except I don't want to talk about it. But, you know, we are right across the river from Marshall University, Steve, if you're just kind of thinking about it. So just so you know.
So just a little background. So I left Sand Springs in 2016. We sold our house, sold everything, moved into a trailer and watched grandkids in North Carolina. And so now I am a member of a congregation in Independence, Kansas. If everyone's there, we got 21 people on a Sunday morning. I'm one of the 3 song leaders. I'm one of the 2 elders. But all that is because of Chuck. So he came in 1994, you know, and I asked him some questions yesterday. I says, so when you went to Xenia, were they able to corral you? So were they able to keep you in one little area on the podium? He said, you know, I noticed he didn't roam too much today. He basically wore out our carpet over the 7 years. And that was the only complaint I ever heard about him when we went to hire him. But Chuck and I enjoyed working with each other over those 7 years, you know. And I don't know about you, but I've got Chuckisms I still use. In fact, I was on a mission trip to Liberia recently, and the preacher called me aside and he said, you need to talk to my wife. She is not talking to members. She's not going with me. And I said, Marshall, look, the church hired you. They didn't hire your wife. And I learned that from Chuck back in Sand Springs because, you know, he's very protective of his family. And so I always remember that you hired Chuck. Now, I don't know. We later hired Melinda. She was a church secretary for a while. You know, it was so important because I think the most important thing that Chuck did in Sand Springs while he was there is he took the stuff, had a lot of stuff. I was an organizational development consultant, and I gave him this secular stuff, and he turned it into faith-based material. And so he was the one, as you saw, that led this effort to create a vision in Sand Springs. Now, if you're in the corporate world or ever was, vision is typically, we want to be the best church in the area. We want to reach out to the world. No, this was a multiple-page document that described the future state of the church at Sand Springs. Multiple pages. And we went to work on that, and the church has basically accomplished that. They're still growing. In fact, I've heard they're the only growing congregation, basically, in the Tulsa area. There's always baptisms and new members in the bulletin. So that was the most important thing that he did. The second most important is I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for Chuck. So in 1996, my name was put forth as an elder. And I said, well, how can I be an elder? I was in the midst of bankruptcy. And Chuck came to my office and he said, I said, how can I be an elder? And he said to me, well, how can you not minister to people? You could minister to people because you've been through this. And so I accepted the position. And so, of course, him and I served till he left in 2001. I went on to serve until over 15 years, till 2016 when I left, and still serving as an elder today. Wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for Chuck. And, of course, over the years, I got involved. I asked him yesterday, so what are you going to do now? Of course, I've not been retired too long. I'm still working. He wasn't sure. I said, well, we'll see what Chuck does. But, after I retired, I got involved in missions, and I called Chuck. How do you do this, Chuck? What do you do in this area, Chuck, as a mission effort in Liberia? Gardening. I'd call Chuck for gardening. He's got this green thumb. And, of course, when Chuck I'd just call him once in a while. So we've talked over the years. So I have always appreciated Chuck and look forward to, and I put it forth. I said, let's go somewhere together. He's National Park. We are too. So I hope that we get together in the future. But I wouldn't be an elder today if it wasn't for Chuck Forsyth.
So as one of the children, I've had the pleasure of being on the journey of ministry the longest. And over his 45 years in ministry, Dad's been called lots of things. He's been called Reverend, right? And that I don't think that title quite fits. I mean, there are some men who stand up here and they hold this position as a place of power and control, and that does not fit my dad at all. He is, in fact, the most humble, outward-facing servant leader that I know. So even though Paul would call you Reverend, that doesn't fit, all right? He's been called minister. I think that's his title here. And it kind of works, except for when we were in Hong Kong, right? And a minister in Hong Kong, that job was actually somebody who served the crown. And so, I sounded good at school when I could say my dad was a minister, right? But that didn't fit. I mean, we could get all official and say he has served the king, but minister maybe doesn't quite fit. Frequently, he's been called pastor, and personally, I think that fits him to a T. He is compassionate and focused on serving others, but he will tell you that really the term pastor applies to our elders and our shepherds. And so we don't really have time to get into the exegesis of Paul's epistles, so we'll just say the pastor doesn't quite fit. So then I think preacher. And initially I shy away from that, right? Because usually when we think of preacher, we think of some man that's going to stand up behind the pulpit and talk to you once again from the book of James. And as it's already been alluded to, Chuck does not stand behind a pulpit, right? They just will not be contained. And he does not drone on, okay? Now, we all know, we're going to be honest, not every sermon was a grand slam, but every sermon was a home run, right? And what you didn't see, but that we got to see in the home, was the hours and hours and hours of study that he put into every single sermon. And I would venture to say he read every book in his library. He focused on sermon development. He focused on vision casting before that was even the thing. As you may or may not know, our congregation is in the midst of looking for a preacher. I don't know what this theme is, but it's making me uncomfortable. Stephen, we will take you too if it doesn't work out. Right? He's here. So study and sermon development, vision casting, and I think you would all agree, equipping of the saints. Hours spent in that. Let me also just add, he was doing PowerPoint even before Bill Gates knew that was a thing. I distinctly remember he would come and he would take our coloring books and he would trace out images to put on overhead projector slides to kind of bring home certain points. And so to this day, I associate Grover with spiritual formation just as much as the alphabet. And don't get me wrong, James is a great book, okay? But I think what is most important, and I think we can all attest to this, is that Dad didn't just tell you that faith without works was dead. He lives his faith. And he encourages us to do the same. He demonstrates day in and day out with absolute consistency that if you love God with your heart and your soul and your strength and your mind, you can't help but serve him. Your life overflows as an offering of gratitude for the sacrifice that he made. It's a beautiful thing that we get to do, being able to live out this life as a Christ follower. And Dad shows us that, not just as somebody who calls himself preacher, but as somebody who loves Jesus with every ounce of his being. Some super smart theologian once said, preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. We think it was St. Francis of Assisi, we're not really sure. Whoever it was, Dad lives it. And so I think the title preacher fits. I think it fits very well. And so while he may be stepping away from the formal title, I know that he will preach the rest of his days. His life is a testimony to the grace and the kindness of our God. And it is such an honor to have been able to witness his preaching. Also, let me acknowledge Mom. The truth is, his ministry would not have been anywhere near as successful without Mom. Mark tells us, absolutely. Mark tells us that Jesus himself sent the apostles out how? 2 by 2. God himself operates in community. And so while today we acknowledge the retirement of Dad, we also acknowledge the retirement of Mom from ministry. And while I'd love to say maybe you're getting your sideboard and kitchen table back, I have a feeling they will always be covered in books and papers. But thank thank you for today and for honoring our parents. We are blessed because we don't have to say goodbye, and we still get to watch their lives of service. So, thank you.
I'll just set the record straight. The best title for my dad is the professional talker. That's what I've always called it. So, as the one standing between lunch, as far as talking, and my dad's afternoon nap, I'll try to keep it brief. So, yes, as the second best souvenir, here's what I have to say. I can't believe I'm here at a retirement ceremony for my dad to celebrate 45 years of ministry. 12,000 hours of sermon preparation, 7 churches, 42 baptisms, 10 weddings, 12 funerals, 1,260 new church members, 7,000 hospital visits. Round of applause. You might be wondering where I got those numbers. I just made them up. Just like his preacher stories, I used it to make this point. And the point is this. I want to say on behalf of everyone here, thank you for your countless hours of prayer, preparation, leadership, guidance, and faith. And every good sermon has 3 points. So I want to tell you the 3 things that I most admire about my dad. First, it would be his emphasis of preaching the Bible. He uses it as his basis of truth and is unwavering. Second, he is always learning with an open mind. He wrestles within himself, and his faith continues to grow. And finally, he is a peacekeeper. As far as it depends on him, he strives for peace in his dealings with the eldership, the body, and at home. So I don't know about your unique experience and how he touched your lives, but I did find this passage, and I hope that maybe something can resonate with you, because I think it describes him well. If he spoke in tongues, if he had the gift of prophecy and could fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, if he had faith to move mountains and gave all and all he had, including his body as a martyr, he is patient and kind. He does not envy or boast, not self-seeking. He's not easily angered. He does not keep record of wrong or delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Love never fails. So as I close, your extraordinary ministry of over 4 decades has touched so many lives, especially mine. I am proud of you. Your impact will be felt for generations to come. Congratulations on your retirement. We love you and thank you. May God continue to bless you richly in all that you do. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you for all that spoke. And I think we got a little extra understanding of Chuck and Melinda's life and service. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have a little video, and it is still part of the dash. So I just want to say one thing, truth in advertising on that video, that was not 1 hour and 59 minutes for Chuck and Melinda to complete the Air Force Marathon, okay? That was another race they were in at the Air Force Marathon. But they were there giving the Air Force a big hand. So we want to give a couple presentations here, and Jeff's going to do that for us.
We have the honor of giving, maybe I should use the mic. I have the honor of giving Chuck and Melinda one of our most cherished gifts. And I'm going to ask Chuck to open it up for you guys can see what it is. You can see behind me what it is, but we're going to show you in the live.
So if I break the ribbon, does that mean we get more kids?
Yeah. That's up to you guys can adopt, I guess. Okay. So what this is, I'll explain as he opens it up. This quilt has the members of this congregation's names on it. So when they get the opportunity to look at this, they get to think about the people that love them and the people that they loved and people that he ministered to. To me, it's an incredible gift. And it's a work that we do here. A few members put a lot more into it than others. And I'm going to ask a couple of those ladies to stand. Oh, get back in the mic. Dion, I know you're way in the back. Could you please stand? That's Dion Lau. She does a great job on the quilts, for sure. Chris Wilson, stand, please. There she is right next to her, yes. I understand that Terry Gehringer was involved. And I also understand that Joan Shaw was involved, right? Joan, there she is. All right. There's a lot of work. Chuck, you're really slow.
Scout is prepared. Where's the pocket knife?
Anybody got a pocket knife? Aha. And there it is. Pull it out and stretch it out for everybody to see it. All right, Chuck. You and me. Let's go in the front here. Boy Scout anthem. On behalf of leadership, obviously you guys know we love Chuck and Melinda. Done a great job. 23 years, it's unbelievable. We watched them raise their kids, Jeremiah, Rachel, Andrea, May, just fantastic family. We've been very, very blessed having them part of our lives. When I look at Chuck, I say that God sent us the right guy at the right time for this congregation. No doubt about it. We've been through some things, but he took us, the last 23 years has been nice and smooth. He's an elder's dream. Right here, elder's dream. Not a lot of drama. I think Jeremiah was kind of saying that. But I will say this, and I don't want to mess this up. This is in jest, all right? I love it. So I want to tell one preacher story. No, it's not preacher. This one is not true. So, shortly after he came here, maybe 1 year, I was struggling with my daughter. And
So I went to the trusted minister of my congregation. And I said, you don't remember this, do you, Chuck? This is no surprise. Just ties into what Gary said earlier. Says, like this. So I went to describe, what's that? So I went to describe, Chuck, my situation. And I said, Chuck, I don't. That's what you're saying?
So I was. This wasn't supposed to be a comedy, but yeah, it could work that way. No, it really is. So I told Chuck a little bit about my dilemma. And I said, she's liking a guy that's a little older. I don't think that's a good fit. And I'm trying to reason with her. And I said, I'm struggling. I said, what's your advice? And then you know what story he told me? The story that Gary told earlier about the kind of guy he was. So guess what? I was done. He says, well, I was kind of this kind of guy. And I'm thinking, all right, I didn't know all that about him. So I thought, well, this guy's not going to be any help because Melinda, being the strong woman that she is, she was able to straighten all that out. And I'm pretty sure Tricia probably would have got there, my daughter, and a lot of you know my daughter. But, you know, I'm sorry I couldn't help but interfere, guys. I got too involved. I was headstrong about it. And everybody knows Sean, right? Yeah. She did okay, didn't she? Yeah. At the end of the day, right? We all know Sean. Okay. So that's my preacher story. He didn't end up being a great counselor for me. But he really is. And I appreciate this story about what Melinda did. Melinda's strong. She's been great. She's quiet strong, if that makes any sense. She's quiet strong. Right. So she kept Chuck in line, and she just did a great job. We love you guys. This has been a great celebration of your life. The friends speaking, it was all wonderful. I appreciate everything here, and enjoy this. All right?
So let me give it the flip side to your coin. The flip side to Jeff's coin was I told my girls that if they started dating somebody I didn't like, that they're kind of scroungy like I was, that as a preacher I could move anytime. We would move to Alaska. We would end that relationship. But we've not moved to Alaska, so they did pretty well.
So they listened.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right,
so
we're going to turn it back over to Gary.
So we're going to have a prayer here to celebrate Chuck's retirement, and Greg's going to come up and lead us in that. I guess the only thing that I would say before we have this prayer is that, you learn things when you do stuff like this, and there's always kind of a lessons learned afterwards. And I think our big lessons learned here is never give Jeff an open mic. Greg.
Join me in prayer as we conclude this ceremony. Lord, we thank you for the time we've had to gather here as a church family around your church. We thank you for that opportunity. We thank you for Chuck and his service, 45 years of service to you. We thank you for his family that has supported him. We thank you for the impact he's had on so many people. And when his life is done on this earth, just with all of us as Christians, may you welcome him and us into your presence. At this time, we also pray for this meal that we're about to partake of. Bless it, bless the fellowship, bless the hands that prepared it. And we just thank you for the continued fellowship we have today. We pray in your Son's name. Amen.
Okay, lunch. We've been waiting for it. So here's what we want to do. I want to do this a little bit organized. Chuck, his family, his extended family, there's a place of honor for you in the back. So we want you to leave first right now. After that, if you have special needs that you need to kind of get out and need some help, please go. Once you get in there, there's going to be tables in the hallway. Go down through there, take whatever you want, but then go in and find a place to sit and try to sit together so we don't have, 4 people standing, but the 4 places they need to sit are at 4 corners of the place. So kind of crunch up as best you can and keep